What's up, everybody, and welcome back to an installation of our first The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly. Today we are doing this on Space Marines, and of course I just have a photo of an Ultramarine because Thomas is here talking about it. Yeah, what we're doing is, as Codexes come out and stuff like that, there's going to be nerfs, buffs, changes, everything like that. So we wanted to categorize stuff into three kind of buckets: the good, the bad, and the ugly. As we get into each topic, we'll kind of talk about what that signifies and why stuff is there. And as we do that, always make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell because you got to get notified of all this content. So, Thomas, we go into the good. On your screen, you will see a bunch of just things. These are the kind of the picks of the cream of the crop. What Thomas has picked out are the goods of the changes, and when we're signifying something as a good, that means it's either a buff or it's something new that is going to help the faction. So, yeah, the first thing on the list, we got heavy intercessors.
I mean, there's so many things in the book to go through, so this list is not exhaustive. But these are the kind of things that, like on the first glance pass, really stuck out to me. I mean, obviously, we saw a little bit of leaks of the heavy intercessors on Warhammer Community before, but 28 points a model with their base gun. You can upgrade them for more expensive, but just tough 5, 3 wounds intercessors, pretty strong.
And their
troops,
and their troops,
and exactly, OPSEC troops, like really good. ATVs,
super
really
excited about these, man. These are cool. Once you see the data sheet on these, you just kind of go, man, these are actually really cool. Right?
They're pretty cheap, 80, 85 points. The only big thing they don't have is core, but I think, Parrot would kind of talk about the Apothecary and some of the stratagems there. It's kind of crazy. They're bikes, so they don't suffer heavy. They got a lot of bullets.
I did forget to list the Apothecary on here, so go ahead and talk right into that. So the Apothecary pairs really well with this, and the Apothecary got a lot of good buffs as well. So
so all of the characters, like the Master of the Forge, the Chaplain, Master of Sanctity, the Chief Librarian, Chief Apothecary, all those guys, they got a different kind of buff. They got changed, so you pay points now for them instead of CP to upgrade them. Some of the stuff that you had to buy Warlord traits or relics for, they kind of get natively. So the Apothecary specifically gets to heal 2. There's a stratagem in the book where you can bring a unit back or a model back from a unit
with full wounds, right?
Full wounds. So that's a bike or infantry unit. So that talking about ATVs, they can bring back a whole ATV, 8 wounds.
And obviously, they're good with other units too. But ATVs, because it's 8 wounds, and you can take them in what, squads of 3, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like the ATVs, or even Outriders are another really good one. That they're 4 wounds, but if you're healing something and bringing something back, that's really strong. That's crazy. You can just keep stuff alive. So now you're forcing your opponent to have to nuke those units, right? It just becomes a hassle.
It's kind of like everyone's going to get the freaking Iron Hands buff, because the base ability of that Chief Librarian, you just keep a 6-up feel no pain bubble.
Yeah.
And then if you take the Super Chaplain, basically pay a few extra points, that stratagem that lets you heal a guy, he gets to do it for free. So he'll get to heal a guy instead of D3. He heals him for 3 wounds, 2 units, and he can use that strat to bring a unit back to life with full wounds. So it's very strong. That guy's going to be most Marine lists. I can't see why you wouldn't do it.
So you mentioned upgrading the characters and stuff like that. Really quick, give me your thoughts on, at first glance, I know you haven't went and started breaking down a bunch of lists or anything yet, but at first glance, not having to spend CP and spending points for these characters, do you think that is going to affect army list building in a good way or a bad way?
I personally think it's a good thing. Usually I'm running Ultramarines with Guilliman, so I have extra command points kind of to spend. But if you're starting with 12 and you want one of these buff characters, or maybe 2 of them, a Chaplain's really good, you're starting to have to make really decisions that are tough as far as command points before the game even starts. But now you can say, I'm going to spend points on it. Points are hard to come by. Things are slightly going up in a few places, but I'd rather make that choice all day long. If a Chaplain's my main go-to guy, and I just have to spend a few more points on him to make a Super Chaplain, plus they get the the additional kind of buffs already built into them, I think those couple extra points are definitely worth it.
So you said Chaplain is your favorite. Now you got a Chaplain on a bike. Is that going to be your new favorite?
Oh, so I mean, Apothecary is good. Chaplain's good. The chaplain on the bike, dope. He got an extra wound. Just figured he'd get one more wound just to go to a bike. He's 7 wounds. And that guy, you can really tool him up to be a little beat face.
Yeah.
And then just all the chaplain buffs in general. Like, I feel like chaplains are pretty good.
And having that mobility to keep up with those faster units, like the Atvs or the Outriders and all these things, like having a chaplain that can keep up with all that, like that's huge. Like the new land speeders, everything.
Yeah, they did change the wording. So if you saw Indominus box where it says at the beginning of the command phase instead of the beginning of the battle round, so some of the litanies you have to wait for it. Like if you're doing the Litany of Faith to kind of get the 5
which
more wound.
is pretty in line with a lot of other factions and stuff, right? Like if you're Tau, you can't get the buff until it's your turn. Like all these other factions suffer from, if you don't go first, you don't have a lot of your buffs, right? So now you're just going to kind of suffer in that same realm of things, which is a good thing.
Yeah, so you got a lot of new units that are just coming out, so those are good. The Tech Marine's really good. You can finally got a Primaris version if you're like me using the old one. Again, kind of to the Master of the Forge aspect. If you upgrade him, he gets a natural buff. They don't have that Warlord trait anymore, which I normally take is +1 to hit for all vehicles within 6, which can be pretty annoying if you're playing against that. Now he just naturally gets it. He picks 1 unit to get +1. So like just by upgrading and paying a few more points for your Tech Marine, you can just beginning of the turn pick a unit.
So it's good, but it's bad, but it's cool. You got a Primaris Tech Marine, and then the Justiciar, we saw the clarification on him.
Yeah, they're always like there's a lot of arguments about when you make someone fight last, can they interrupt, or if they fight first, how does that all work? So now they clarified that. So when you pick someone to fight last, they become ineligible to fight. So that kind of makes the wording clear that they really are fighting last. So that helps him a lot. He did take a little bit of a hit, and we'll kind of cover him in a different category. His little 6-inch bubble is now 3 inches, so it makes him a little bit more tricky to use to get that power off, but it's pretty strong. So if you're a fan of Justiciar or combat, that guy's really good.
So another just overall Space Marine buff across the board is 2 wound mini Marines, and this is from like the jump guys to like everything else. Like those guys going to 2 wounds, man, that's really good. That's real good.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to pay extra points for those guys now. So, I mean, but if you just have some, unless you're just opposed to smaller Marines mixed with Primaris Marines, I had a lot of friends who are like, they just want mini Marines to go away. You now have a wild world of more options. And if you just need a 5-man squad of Marines sitting in the back on an objective, and you don't want to pay extra points for Primaris guys who literally aren't going to do anything, you can take the same amount in a tactical squad.
And honestly, one faction, maybe this was a big deciding factor in this, is the Death Watch, right? Because they want to make these veteran squads that have all these mini like old Marines and stuff, like because it's better than the Primaris for them. So now they're automatically at like a disadvantage because they're using all these old tools still. So now that those are like 2 wounds, it makes these Death Watch like veteran squads really, really good, right? Because you can mix and match and stuff like that. You don't feel like you're forced to play Primaris, and you have these extra wounds, even though they are more in points. Just having those extra wounds, like it goes a long way.
It does, and some units just are cool. They have some really cool models, or they have some special rules. If you want Vanguard veterans or jump pack guys, outside of the Inceptors, you don't have jump pack Primaris guys. So I mean, you don't have tons of choices. I guess you have Suppressors,
but, right? And so now you got those fast-moving jump pack guys with the fly keyword that have 2 wounds now. So like that's cool. That's awesome for like a lot of armies that like to run fast stuff like that. And then also in additional wounds, you got bikes and Terminators going to 3 wounds.
Ooh, so yeah, bikes and Terminators. So it's interesting. So they have scout bikes, regular bikes, and now they have outrider bikes. So scout bikes stayed at 2, but the regular bikes moved up to 3, and then the outriders stayed at 4. So that you kind of have this kind of tiered thing, which is really nice. So they do have all different benefits between the 2. So you kind of are between the 3. Like so, there's some choices to be made, and it's kind of a worthwhile choice. So I kind of like it. They kind of make a lot more choices relevant in the book. Now, things that were just really terrible, no one even looked at. Now you look at it, and you're like, maybe they got better damage, or maybe they got more wounds. They're relevant now, so at least looking at it.
And then also another part of the Terminators is they got the teleport Homer ability, like
so that's really strong.
Cool.
Yeah, you had to point that out to me because I kind of glossed over it because I'm like, Terminators, I don't take Terminators, but 3 wound Terminators, like just having an extra wound is really strong. They did change the storm shields, so
Yep.
It's just like the Blade Guard now, 4+ invul, but +1 to your save. So anything with a 2-up save with a +1 is pretty strong.
Which is then a 1-up save, and in cover that's a 0 save. So like now you're basically saying that these Terminators, like, or Paladins, whatever they are ignoring AP1 essentially, ignoring AP2 if they're in cover, right? Like
Yeah.
that is strong. Like even though their invuln save is 4-ups, like if they have storm shields, like whatever, like you've got to be hitting them with AP4 to get there if they're in cover, AP3 if they're not, right? So it's like it's a
Yep.
trade-off, and honestly, it's probably better, and that's why it's in the good for the Storm Shield update. It's like that's really strong to just have +1 to your save in a lot of situations.
Yeah. And
And
that, and just like the other thing about Terminators, like the like you said, the teleport
yeah,
armor, like when Terminators come down, like sometimes they'll get stuck and they're slow and they're on that side of the board. You can just ignore them or stay away from them. Now they can just redeploy for free, like just part of their rules once per
super
game.
good.
It's
And it's
just like
wholly,
bam,
and that's wholly within your deployment or within 3
or
inches
within 3 inches of your
of
unit.
a unit.
You,
Yeah.
you still have to stay outside of 9, but like if you're pressing up and those Terminators are just hanging out in the back on an objective, and now it's late game, you need them to fight. Now they can just come in next to you. You don't have to
Yep.
just put them in deep strike and they're not doing anything. Like talk about annoying, right? Like
And we're not even saying like close combat. Like imagine just even with just the bolter output that a 10-man Terminator squad is going to do, jumping across the board like that and now being in your face, right? You can be like, oh, I don't have to worry about them, and it's like, oh, they're off the board. Oh, now they're on the board, and they can see you, right? And you can move around terrain now with them easier. You're not just foot slogging across the board. Like super good.
yeah, they did update the lightning claws, which is awesome. If you take a pair versus one,
Mm-hmm.
you can get extra attacks. So it's one per claw. So 2 claws gets you an extra 2 attacks. So giving those guys a lot more attacks and makes the choice, right? You're either going to take Thunderhammer, Storm Shield, or you're not. Why would you ever take Lightning Claws now?
Yep.
Like Lightning Claws is relevant, right?
So then you've got your Blade Guard and your Eradicators able to go from 3-man to 6-mans. Like
So everyone hates Eradicators, but those guys going up to 6 wounds is just making more people on the internet rage. And they got some extra options now with taking a multi melta, so you can even have more damage.
yep.
On their guns,
And you can take one per 3, right? It's like their heavy weapon version. Yeah.
Yeah, but they've tweaked their rules a little bit, so we'll talk about that in some of the other sections. So it's not all roses there, and that's an expensive unit. So if you did take a 6-man, um, there are some limitations to that, but pretty strong. That's a lot of wounds. That's a lot of melta. If you need some tank, man, Eradicators.
Speaking of meltas, you've got the meltas and the flamer changes. What, like those are good, right? Like
Those are good, right? Like anyone likes flamers, like you suffer through the why would I take flamers? I can't deep strike in and flame something,
yeah.
or I'm going to get Overwatch. I can't flame because they're outside of 9 inches. Well, now they're 12 inches on flamers, so that's huge, right? So you could just shoot farther. Meltas get extra damage, so they changed the damage roll if you haven't seen or if you've been living under a rock. The 2d6 take the highest, kind of if you're within half range, has kind of gone away, and now it's d6 plus 2, or if you're
within half
range,
plus
4 for like a multi-melt. So
that's so much better than the 2d6 take the highest. Like it's so, and like if you play Tau, or if you've played against Tau and you've played against their D3, their +3 damage like ion weapon, that flat 3 plus whatever else is so good. So like these meltas having that flat 2 or flat 4 plus D6 is disgusting. Like see ya vehicles if they're hitting you. Like see ya, bye bye. It is gonna be crazy.
Yes. So if your vehicle, or just these 3-wound intercessors, like if there's lots of meltas around, it might not matter. You have 3 wounds. There's gonna be tons of melt.
Yeah.
Coming out of
So we talked about the Storm Shield stuff. We talked about most of the character stuff. Is there anything else you want to talk about on the character end? Like you're paying for them. I guess their auras are different. They're affecting like core and things like that, right?
Yes, I mean the core thing, like for the most part, you're really only losing out on non-dreadnought vehicles. Everything else seems to be core, and characters. So characters are not core. ATVs, unfortunately, are not core, even though all regular bikes are. So that will kind of limit their shooting effectiveness a little bit potentially, and dread vehicles. So there's a lot of different vehicles, planes, tanks, those sort of things. They are not core, so they're not apps. They don't have access to those types of rerolls.
And then I know I know you have another list of like smaller stuff. If you want to touch on like the stratagems, and then you can kind of just go through like a couple more like the miscellaneous stuff that you kind of had listed in the goods. If you just want to.
Yeah. So one more thing, like from a dreadnought perspective, that's the old half damage that got changed, in fact, to just -1 damage for dreadnoughts. Now, that strat is kind of built into the dreadnoughts just by default. So you don't have to pay a CP to be -1 damage. Dreadnoughts just always are -1 damage. So
And
that's
is that all dreadnoughts? Is that like every dreadnought?
every dreadnought in the Marine book. So if any of the Forge World books, like the Leviathan or the Relic Contemptor, some of those things, Deradeos, those aren't, unless they get fact, you assume they would be. Those aren't included in that. But all of the dreadnoughts in the book, Ironclads, or not Redemptors, like Invictor is not a dreadnought, but those are reduced.
Well, that's annoying.
Yeah, and I think they also like reduce the damage, like for like Impulsors and Redemptors for when they explode. Invictors,
yes.
Warsuits, they don't blow up D6 damage anymore. They only blow up D3.
Yes, which is very good.
I know that was always my biggest complaints. Impulsors were great, but they'd always blow up on me and not my opponent. So
and correct me if I'm wrong, but smaller things. I thought I saw like dreadnoughts, like it's just 1 mortal wound instead of D3 now too. I think they adjusted some of the smaller things to be a single mortal wound, like some of the other vehicles in the universe are.
There are some, yeah. So you just kind of go through
I don't know what the exacts are, but yes, damage has gone from D6 to D3 or D3 to 1 mortal wound, depending on the size of the vehicle and what they do.
Yeah. Now a repulsor still explodes D6, so not everything gets away from that, but yeah. Some good notes on some of the stratagems. You can let's see here. I got my list. Death to the Traitor. That used to be kind of like if I'm fighting chaos, I can get basically Death to the False Emperor for a CP. 6 explode to reroll another hit. They changed that now to just reroll all hits. So that's pretty strong, especially with the way the rerolls are working. Just be able to reroll hits if you're playing chaos. So it's a use case, but it's way better than it was. The assault stratagem is changed. It's good. It's only 2 CP. Like if you want to. Oh no, this is the hit and run Hammer Wrath. If you have jump pack guys. Before it was kind of like on a 6+ you would do a mortal wound. Now it's you roll equal to or above their toughness. So if you're fighting some really wimpy guys, or you roll for each man in your unit, and then if you beat their toughness, do a mortal wound. So that's way better.
Something similar to that too. I don't know if you saw, but some of the data sheets got the Melt-A-Bomb keyword added to it, and there's some stratagems and stuff that play into that. So it's pretty cool that they're allowing like units to have these unique keywords that bring bonus things to it. Yeah.
Reavers have something along that. Anything that had like smoke grenades, like infiltrators and cursors, those things have gone to a stratagem now, which I guess is sort of good and bad. You do that stratagem in your opponent's shooting phase, so you kind of don't have to pop smoke and then.
Right, you can still shoot, and then if you're targeted, you can decide if you want to be -1 versus doing it in your shooting phase and then not shooting or doing anything, not knowing if you're going to get shot.
Right, and you can reuse it again. So
yeah,
it's not like you
and you know what bothers me about that though is that you're basically it's a 1 CP strat to make a -1, where the Eldar's lightning fast reaction is the exact same thing, but it's 2 CP.
Maybe they'll adjust.
I just saw that and I was like, oh, that's kind of crappy. Hopefully they update the other one.
It was so strong back with that army because you could stack so many minuses to hit.
That's not what we're talking about, but I did notice that, so it was just interesting that as things get updated, it's kind of a insight to where things might get brought into line. Another thing you have on here is the suppressors move to 3 shots.
That's right, 3 shots. So that's way better than 2 shots. They lost an AP, so it's only -1 AP. They're not nearly as powerful there. You kind of like it's one of those things where you kind of wonder if it's worth it, but more shots is more shots. So that's good.
And then really the only other thing that I see on here is the Psychic Fortress spell.
Psychic Fortress, yeah. So that was an old standby. That's kind of secret good in my Marine list that no one really kind of saw. You needed that to play against Psychers because it gave you a 4-up against mortal wounds in the Psychic phase, so people were smiting you a lot. You had a good power. Now they've just changed it to a flat invulnerable save aura. So talk about
Wow.
upgrade. It doesn't even have to be core or infantry. It could be any unit, something like Ultramarine. So
Holy cow.
you just like I hand out a 5-up invulnerable save to anybody within 6 of me. So like toe in, your whole unit gets it. Like that like it really does kind of harken back to some Iron Hands abilities where you got Apothecary hand out 6 up, feel no pain, and everyone's got a 5-up invulnerable save. Like, man.
Wow.
Pretty tasty.
So now we go into the bad. So what the bad is these are changes that are a nerf that are more to bring things into balance for kind of everything that they're balancing, but they're not things that are killing units or anything like that. We'll leave that kind of stuff for the ugly that start to completely nerf stuff to the ground or make you really question playing it. So this is like, these are smaller nerfs. They're okay, but they do hurt things for certain reasons. But it's okay.
Yeah, so not terrible. Like I said, you got some buffs to GCR. He's first on the list, but your range got reduced to 3, so a little bit more. It's not just like, well, he's an auto include.
Yep.
Which I think is good. You don't want to have just units that just like, well, why would I take anything else? And now I make all my armies unassaultable because I have this one guy in here. You can get around his 3-inch range. You can really maneuver if your opponent is not in the right position to still attack what you want and not let him reduce you. So pretty good there. But a little bit of nerf.
Aggressors. Whew, these things were the epitome of I'm going to shoot you to death.
Yeah,
and if they were on the board, you needed to kill them.
It's exactly. Some people may think that's the ugly. They might need to drop into the ugly category, but they got some.
Maybe, yeah.
Because there's a huge nerf to them, right? So they cannot shoot twice. They lost that ability. They can't advance and shoot without penalty, so they lost that ability. So their 5-inch move in short range is really gonna be a little bit more telling. Again, it guys goes back to why would you ever take anything else than aggressors?
Right.
Like point for point, damage for damage. They fought and shot way better. Now they're just a unit. The points stayed the same. They just lost all those extra buffs. Their fist did go to flat 2 damage in combat instead of D3, so I think that's an overall buff. And then their gauntlets, it used to be assault 6 for the gauntlets. They're now 2 gauntlets at 3 shots each. So theoretically, if you wanted to split fire, you don't have to shoot 6 shots at it. You can do 3 here, 3 there. So that's a little bit of nerf. So I think we kind of gave them a few positives along with the big negatives, and kind of stuck them in the bad category. But overall, I think it'll be great to have some other options other than having to just choose aggressors because they're just flat, hands down, the best.
And then you got your core versus non-core. You touched on this a little bit before, but overall, this is a nerf, and it's just something that you just have to kind of figure out how to play around and change things, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So now you have auras you got to manage. Some things just don't get any buffs, right? So unless you have a stratagem that gives them to reroll hits, you just don't have a repulsor or some land speeders or ATVs getting rerolls naturally from your character.
And
so
everybody who doesn't play Space Marines right now, when they see that,
they're probably loving it.
They
right?
are like jumping for joy. They're like, oh my gosh. So like for us, we're all like, yeah. But for the Space Marine players, it's like, ah, man, that sucks. But we'll get used to it and play around it and figure out how you got to build lists, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they'll see tons of rerolls and may or may not even affect you if you're playing against Marines. You're like, they're still rerolling everything, but they do have slightly less rerolls. And I think from a gameplay perspective, anyone who's played against a ton of Marine rerolls kind of gets annoyed because you just.
I'm all about just dreadnoughts not having it, and I'm a happy camper. Like not even.
I use my relic contemptors all the time. So that's their core. Well, at least hopefully the regular Contemptor's core.
So then you've got some psychic powers that got updated that are.
Yeah, so we talked about Psychic Fortress being great, and then we see Null Zone, which kind of slipped by my glance at first blush. But
I love this change, man.
Hopefully they fact it, because I've seen this in past where they did change it. But right now, Null Zone does not say enemy units. It used to be like no invulnerable saves within 6 inches of it, enemy units. Now it just says units within 6, no invul. So you could potentially turn off your own invulns the way it's worded right now. So pretty bad.
Yeah, Rowboat and Tigerius, come say hello to me. Come do it. Come do it. Turn off that invone on Rowboat.
Make sure you kill them for that. But I mean, it's still like you get to turn off an invul save. So I mean, that's still good. That's a great power, and that can win you games against armies that rely on that or have really great invul. So
and then Might of Heroes only affects core.
Yep, Might of Heroes is good, but only affects core. Does not.
It's like you can't put it on a Dreadnought or anything.
You can't put it on. So a Dreadnought is core, so you can't put it on a Dreadnought, but it does not work on characters. So like typical targets for Mighty Heroes is maybe a Smash Captain or Gilliman, a Dreadnought, so you can get extra attack. That would work, but those other characters, no way. Or you want to make it on a Repulsor to make it toughness 9, no go. It's not core, can't get Mighty Heroes. So that's kind of a nerf there. I mean, you still have the power; it's still good. It's still the same power. But now it only goes on certain targets, and usually the ones you want to cast it on, it's not. You can't cast on those,
right?
So that sucks.
So scouts no longer troops; they move to the elite slot.
Yeah, so sad. You can't get by with your cheap troops, even though like in the new edition, like the scouts have gone up quite a bit, so they weren't the bargain that they used to be. So you were kind of already moving a lot of you guys to Primaris dudes, anyways, just to be more durable on objectives. But now it's like guaranteed. Like, why would you take scouts now? They're pricey and they're not OPSEC troops. You're just not going to do it. I mean, there are the bonuses of they can redeploy and they have different weapons, but you get they're not cheap enough to be managing that. So it also hurts like the Landspeeder Storm, like the whole jump out and get super extra movement with an OPSEC unit that's relatively cheap and you can steal objectives. Now it doesn't work.
Very true. So updated stratagem on Skilled Rider. It is now -1 to hit instead of giving them an invuln save.
Yeah, so I've been using that stratagem a lot just because I've been using some land speeders, obviously with some bikes and some changes to bikes. You're kind of like, yeah, I'll be able to pop this invulnerable save, or same thing with the ATVs. But now that speeder, that stratagem's gone away. So they've changed it just to -1 to hit, which is still good, but it's cheaper. It's only 1 CP, but it's not nearly as powerful as just having a straight up invul. But you do have other ways to get it. So it seems overall, just a little bit of a nerf. -1 to hit, still something. So that's still relevant. So still.
But man, with those fast units, you just put a chaplain on a bike, right, and give them 5-up invuln bubble now, right? So
the chaplain that's an apothecary bubble. It's an apothecary bubble that gives you the 5-up. Oh no, you cast the spell for the 5-up invuln, right?
Yeah, it's the litany, right?
No. So it's not a litany.
Oh, it's not a litany. Oh, that's the librarian. Okay.
It's an aura, so your librarian has to be nearby for them to get the buff. So probably won't be ranging ahead unless maybe you had a jump pack.
A jump pack or something, yeah. So successor traits, tell us about those. What's happening?
So the main ones people usually always saw, if you saw successors, was long range marksman, stealthy, and master artisans, and sometimes you saw hungry for battle. So hungry for battle is +1 to charge. That stayed the same, but all the other ones have changed. So long range marksman, that was the extra range to your guns. Now it's only 3 inches to rapid fire and heavy. So like assault guns don't get it, which is relevant for like flamers, even though flamers get the increased range. So a couple guns where you want extra range doesn't matter. Stealthy, it used to be outside of 12 inches you got cover. They did clarify now it's light cover, but now they've changed it to 18 inches. So a little bit easier to kind of get rid of your cover and make it not just an auto choice, right? It used to be like, man, especially in 9th edition, like some things like vehicles and stuff can't get cover naturally. Being able to just always have cover is pretty strong. So now 18 inches on the smaller board, not necessarily as easy to always get it.
Another thing is that kind of falls in this vein is like the Salamanders, right, and their rerolls and how
Master of Arts is the last one, right? So it used to be reroll 1 hit, 1 wound, which if you haven't seen it or worked through that, it actually works out to quite a lot of rerolls in the right circumstances. But now it's just reroll 1 hit. They took away the reroll 1 wound, so quite a bit reduced. So just taking that as a successor is not nearly as powerful as just playing Salamanders or playing some of the other main factions, because I think their buffs are a little bit better.
And then you've got Eradicators cannot advance and do total obliteration.
Yeah, so their shoot twice ability, total obliteration. If they shoot all their guns at the same target, they can shoot again. They can't do it if they advance. So I know I've played plenty of times where maybe I deployed them on the board, and first turn I need to advance, or I've come in from reserve, I've killed whatever I shot at, and then now turn 2 I'm really slow. Maybe I deployed in a crater because I'm trying to get cover, and now I got to move 3 inches and I can't shoot at anybody. So that's huge. That takes away their ability to double shoot against targets if they're out of range. And then also, like, if you want to take that upgrade to a multi-melta, that's a heavy weapon, right? So if you advance, you can't shoot it. So it starts becoming, the choices there limit how effective those guys could be. So their range it starts to become more matched. But before 24 inches, you're like, whatever, I'll just run. I could basically shoot, 3/4 to the whole board, because it's enough distance.
And just to correct, the Salamanders is you reroll 1 wound roll now.
Did they change? They flip those?
Yeah, so it's each time a unit with this tactic is selected to shoot or fight, you can reroll 1 wound roll when resolving that unit's attack.
Oh, so they did change it. So the Successors reroll 1 hit, whereas Salamanders reroll 1 wound. That's good. So they're not the same.
Yeah, so they are different. But the Salamanders lose the hit and wound, and it's just the wound. So.
Yeah, I think that's probably a little bit more palatable because you have other ways to get reroll hits from your characters.
Right. Yep, it makes sense. And then you've got the Eliminators losing out a lot line of sight shooting.
Yeah, so they kind of changed that, and everyone's kind of like they left out this wording. Should we fact it? Can they shoot? So that one of their gun profiles had out of line of sight shooting. So they clarified that, or made it where no, they cannot shoot out of line of sight anymore. Also, they lost their sergeant buff, where the sergeant can say, "Hey, I don't shoot, but I give everyone +1 to hit, +1 to wound." Now they don't have that anymore. They changed their D3 damage guns to 2 flat damage, which is that better or worse? Probably better.
I think it's better. I like the flat 2 over a D3. I think it's overall better.
They do have a update. Instead of if the guy has a carbine, it used to be like I shoot Overwatch and then I can move away. Now it's during the shooting phase. After I shoot, I can make a normal move. So it's they can kind of shoot and fire and fade kind of thing. So that's kind of neat.
And that kind of replaces they don't need line of sight, right? Where it's like
because they can be behind a wall, pop out, shoot, and then come back in. They are heavy weapons still, so you're still suffering the minuses to move, and it's not all roses there. I mean, I just don't know necessarily think Eliminators are great, especially at the points costed there.
And then the last thing on the bad is the Chaplain Litany, which you talked about a little bit, is now at the start of the command phase instead of the battle round.
Yeah, so we kind of missed one of the Chaplain Litanies in the good. Let me go back to that before we talk about that, because we kind of covered this one, the bad, right? So the good one was they changed Exhortation of Rage. That used to be a 6s explode in combat. So he gave out an aura, which is pretty decent. But if you're based on fighting and you have a lot of attacks, 6 explodes pretty strong. Now they changed it to +1 to wound in melee. So he gives out an aura +1 to wound. Like, talk about fantastic, getting like chaos where you have veterans of the Long War, just having +1 to wound on a melee unit.
Is it picking a melee unit or is it a aura?
It is an aura, I believe. I'll double check. So while I'm looking that up, the bad though, like we said, was just the timing of the stuff. Instead of at the start of the battle round.
Yeah, it's the command phase now, so yeah, you don't just automatically start off with these buffs if you're going second.
Yeah, but the thing is, it is select 1 unit.
Okay.
It's a core unit or a character unit within 6.
Okay.
So that's good. The core, you can give it to a character. That's still good.
Cool. And then we move on to the ugly. So this is maybe the aggressors should have fallen in here. Maybe not. You guys can let us know what you think. But this is kind of the bigger nerfs that are just making things more on the unplayable side, right? Or starting to go down that that route.
Certainly, yeah. Certainly, if you're taking impulsors a lot, you're going to be really sad because they've changed a lot with the impulsors. If you ever played against impulsors, they can be just kind of just demoralizing in
I
how
feel
difficult
bad
they
for
were.
everybody that has an impulsor list right now that just finished it to play, like
Yeah,
Jamie.
one of our good friends, he just actually won some online. He's won a few online tournaments. He's a great player, play a lot of TTS, but yeah, he's got a couple impulsors that he really likes, and they do work for him with the Space Wolf list. But now, no fly. It's a
Oof,
big hit for
that's
those vehicles
honestly so big.
because now they're going to have to suffer like every other vehicle and drive in and around buildings. What a
Yep.
pain!
You can't just hide
Uh,
them behind a building, jump to the other side. All the craters, all the forests in ninth are affecting them now. Like they're not as effective, right?
Not nearly as effective. That in itself is just huge.
Yeah.
Then you lose the 4-up invulnerable save, which everyone kind of was like, yeah, 4-up invul in that tank is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now it's a 5+. So again, kind of making some of those other choices. Maybe it's not worth it, or maybe I get a
Yeah.
5+ from this psychic power,
Yeah.
and I'll take some of these other weapon options
One
instead. So now you have choices
one
there.
thing I will point out in there though is at least they still do have an invuln save because across all the other transports in like all of 40K, nobody really has that 5-up invulnerable save, right? Like you just have these transports that just get shot and die. So at least they still have an option of an invulnerable save transport. Look at the light at the end of the tunnel there.
That's right. And then again, we did give them a little bit of plus earlier where they don't explode D6. So
Yep.
if you've ever been exploded on by a damn impulsor, now it's back down to
And their
D3.
weapons are free, so why not?
And then they went down a few points, so it's not all bad for the impulsor, but
But
certainly they've been toned down quite a bit
and then
from
they
the power
also
that
lost the -2 to charge them.
That's right. So that's another big thing. You can use them effectively to screen and block. People come in deep strike, and I'm going to charge you 9 inches. It used to be very painful, -2. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
stick that thing in a crater, and now you're unchargeable. They've taken that away. They've given them the keyword now, so they have that ability kind of still there with the stratagem, but you can't just like across the board every unit has it. So um, a little bit of change there, and it makes it more costly.
It moves to a stratagem though, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's
So
right.
so it's like they're just taking these rules that everybody was kind of using and abusing, and they're like, oh, these are just too strong because you could take too many in your list. Let's move those rules to a stratagem, right?
That's right.
And then the ones that people always want to use that like the half damage, the -1 damage to dreadnoughts and stuff like, oh, that's not really broken. You've got wave serpents that kind of do it. Let's just buff certain things and take these away from stratagems. So you can see kind of the back and forth that they're doing when they're making these changes.
Yeah, and you never really see dreadnoughts outside of maybe some of the Forge World ones. So just kind of again making those options relevant,
Yep,
right? If so,
definitely.
like a regular dreadnought might be useful to take because it always has that. Then I
Yes.
might use it. Right?
There's one thing that I think is to note is once you start to see the meta of being spammed of certain things, they like to come in and change the balance around to have everybody rethink what you're playing and try to make more of a variety out there and not be like, here's the only thing you can play, which is really good. So then Thunderfire cannons, we saw these out start to go away in ninth. Now they're going to just completely go away
Yeah,
forever.
they really jacked them up. I mean, they went from 100 points or whatever they were before to like 140. So like in ninth, you weren't really seeing them because just points were just so high. But now they've really nerfed them. They've dropped the points a little bit. I think they're 120 now. But um, the fact that they're now strength 4, AP 0 instead of strength 5 -1 um, has really taken a hit. They're not core, so you can't get rerolls on them.
And they're
And
probably going to be suffering -1 to hit most of the time with like how terrain works now and
with
everything.
terrain
So
works,
like,
with force or anything, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And then they also lost that stratagem that says you can't shoot it twice. So that strat to fire the Thunderfire cannon twice is gone. You still have
yeah,
Tremor Shell. It's slightly tweaked, so it's not quite as much movement reduction. But yeah, Thunderfire.
they're not good. They're not good anymore. Bye bye.
Be
So
good to have
another
a
thing that we've been seeing is the grav bombs, right, coming in out of rhinos, out of drop pods, things like that, and people just buffing up gravs. And one of the big things that really helped that was the grav amp stratagem.
That's right. So I mean, you used to be you reroll all your wounds and your damage. because they had D3 damage against armor 3 or better.
Yep.
Now that strat is just gone. You still got your grav guns. Actually, they've increased range from 24 inches to 30 inches, so that's something still good. And their damage profile has changed now. Instead of D3, it's flat 2. So that's still good. It's still relevant. Strength 5. Probably good against those heavy intercessors or toughness 5 guys. So it's not all bad for grav.
You just don't have
a way
to
to
reroll your wounds, right?
Yeah, so it's not the auto include now. If you want Devastators, now there's other choices, right? So multi-meltas now have gotten a little new flair. So there's other choices. So that's good, but bad for grav, I think, ultimately.
Centurions lose bolter drill.
Oh, so before we go to that, transhuman.
Oh yeah, transhuman. I threw that in there, right?
It's all the way ugly because it only works on Primaris. That may or may not be ugly for you if you don't use any of the other guys, but some people who like to use Centurions no longer can use that. Even though they're toughness 5, it may or may not have been as relevant.
Like Dreadnoughts, right? Dreadnoughts used to be able to use it. Am I right?
No, it used to be only on infantry.
Okay, so it was only infantry? Okay.
And maybe bikes? I can't remember.
Well, so Terminators can't use it. I can tell you that much.
That's true. That's right. Terminator. So some of the Marine units now that you see more use because they got extra wounds, not going to be able to use it. Some Vanguard veterans, something like that. Terminators not going to be able to use transhuman. So that's pretty bad. They did change the cost. 2 CP. It's now down to 1 CP if it's 5 models or less. So if you have a small squad, it only costs you 1 CP instead of 2. So that's pretty positive. But again, the limiting it to just Primaris really takes a big swipe out of transhuman. And Centurions, I don't know who at the development place really got hit with Centurions. Maybe it was all those Iron Hand Centurions they played against, or Raven Guard Centurions. They're just tired of seeing Centurions. Instead of raising up their points or something, they just said, we don't like these Centurions. So they took a lot of stuff away from them. They, by default, are excluded on the list of Bolter. It's Bolter Discipline. I was correct. It's not Bolter Drill. I think Bolter Drill is an Imperial Fist thing. Bolter Discipline, so they don't get to shoot twice at long range. They still have to just walk into normal range, which Centurions are so slow. They almost never get to rapid fire unless you're close fighting them.
Dude, I love playing against those things with Eldar that you can just like half their movement -2 to movement and stuff. It's like you guys are moving like an inch. Like have fun. They just sit there all game.
I don't believe they're core, so another hit for them. Double check that.
Lots of negatives on them. They're just not.
Get tired of seeing like every list with 3 or 4 units of Centurions. Well, good news for you. You're not gonna see that
anymore. The fight twice stratagem.
So I personally am a big fan of this, even though it's on the ugly situation. Because for me, fluff wise, or even just game wise, just like I'm going to build this souped up captain, the smash captain, right? And like his whole job is just to suicide into this unit and fight, then kill something, and then you kill him, and then he'll die and he'll fight again. You'll spend a strat to fight twice, and then you'll kill him, and then he'll fight again when he dies. Like, let me fight 3 times with the super captain, and he just kills like half your army. Like, game wise, that could be game breaking. That could win you the game with this one little thing. Spend a lot of CP, but it goes off. But I think it's just like
it's a real feels bad to play against moment when it happens. It's real feels bad.
And some of the Space Wolf guys where they buffed up super amount of attacks they can get. Ragnar coming at me, he could be pretty just ridiculous. So they changed that altogether. So now that stratagem that used to be any Astartes unit could fight again at the end of the fight phase for 3 CP. They've changed it to 2 CP, but only Assault Intercessors. So that's it. Like, you have to take Assault Intercessors to be able to fight again.
Yep.
So, huge change. None of this Smash Captain fighting again, those characters fighting again. And then speaking of fighting, when they die, those characters, when you die, like you just got beat up by that Thunderhammer guy, and now you're going to get rid of him, and he's going to fight you again and kill you. No. He can only fight in death if he hasn't already fought in combat. So if he fought first and then he did his damage and you return swell and kill him, he cannot fight again with the death. So that's a huge nerf. That's big. That. So I don't think you'll be seeing those Smash Captains just run around doing what they used to do. There's some busts to the Chapter Master and the Smash Captain. They reduce Thunderhammer points. So you might still see those guys running around. They're pretty good, but they're not nearly in the same fashion as people like to
But
use
they
them
don't buff themselves with the rerolls, right?
That's right. So if you take a chapter master now, which costs points instead of CP, you do get to take a captain and a chapter master because you're limited now in the detachments. You're limited to one captain and 2 lieutenants per detachment. So you can't double up on 2 smash captains. You'd have to upgrade one to a chapter master. He gets to pick 1 core unit to reroll all hits, and then he rerolls ones. But again, for core units, he's not a core unit because he's a character. Nobody else is a core unit that he can't buff. So it doesn't work on him. So yeah. So I didn't say he wouldn't buff himself, but he would. So that one when he's a chapter master, you can pick 1 unit that's core or a character to reroll all hits. So he could buff himself to reroll all hits. So make sure I get that right.
It's just he's choosing himself instead of other people, and it's not an order to do everything anymore.
That's right. Oh no! So he gives out the 1, but he also has a special ability that he says I can pick 1 unit to reroll all hits. He doesn't reroll all hits for everyone. He still rerolls the captain hits.
Okay, so he can still do it. He can still do it on himself.
Yes.
He's just giving up another unit. So okay, I got you. So you can soup him up. Thomas doesn't think you're going to see as many. Read the books, do the things, and we'll see you on the tabletop.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.